Coming up on the program today, world leaders arrive in Paris for summit for new global financing pact. And world shares slip after glum interest rate prediction by Jerome Powell. Plus, Zambian currency and Eurobonds rally on bets of a debt revamp deal. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Will Ibong. This is Business Incorporated. We kick off first with markets in Africa, where sentiments were mostly negative at intraday. If we look at it, we see the Nigerian NGX marginally up 0.03%, while South Africa on the flip side was down almost 2%, 1.87%. That's a huge dip for the market at intraday. But look at the flip side, we see Egypt. The EGX, the intraday trading was more than 0.5% lower, while Kenya closed Wednesday's session greatly in green territory. It was 3.5% up. Now look at the Middle East. Let's dive in there and see what was trading there for the Middle East. We see mixed sentiments in that space. We see Abu Dhabi index up 0.35%. Dubai's index, however, was down 0.12%. Now we look at Saudi's exchange. You see it's up 0.21%, while the Qatari index was down 1.34% to settle at 10,106 points. Now, world leaders and financiers are gathered in Paris right now for a summit of the new global financing pact. And this was organized by France's President Macron. He's right now with world leaders to discuss the new financing deal and how that would impact low-income countries in Africa. Now we're joined by Deutsche Welle's correspondent, Warda Imran. She gives us more insights on that. Warda, how does this summit stand out?
Well, the idea for this summit was announced 7 or so months ago when the French president basically said, not in a year, not in 2 years, but this conversation needs to happen now, next spring. This is what he said at COP27 last year in Egypt, in collaboration with Barbados. Basically, this conference is a signal from France about the urgency of the issue. But does it stand out? Only in the sense that it aims to establish a clear route of discussion, the restructuring of international finance avenues for low-income countries, to find ways to make faster payments, make mechanisms easier through which bilateral and multilateral funding can be dispersed. To describe this summit, there's a lot of many interesting things on the agenda. Although this is one of the dozens of climate conferences arranged and coming up this year, I wonder if this will yield different results or just echo the same sentiments from the last ones. The one thing that's interesting is how much pressure this conference is trying to push on IMF, World Bank, and other lenders.
Now, the Barbados Prime Minister is one of the key players here. What is the initiative about?
Yeah, so it's called the Bridgetown Initiative. And so she basically says, open it. Open the doors of lenders, make it easy, make capital more accessible. A large part of the difficulties associated with accessing this capital is how hard it is to make it tangible, real, until it's in your hands. Commitments are often made, announced, but never followed through. For example, there was the promise of $100 billion in climate financing to be reached annually starting from 2020. Now, many are saying that this announcement will come through on this summit, that finally this target has been met, only 3 years later. And will it continue? We are yet to find out. But the Bridgetown Initiative is to speed up these disbursements. It looks at multilateral development banks like the World Bank, lenders like IMF, and asks them to expand their risk in order to help out the vulnerable. A focus will be on the special drawing rights of the IMF, which are backed by currency reserves. I think there will be a talk to make a pledge to rechannel $100 billion from these drawing rights, which are often untouched and are reserved. So I think there will be a lot of talk on that end, and we're yet to see what comes out of this.
Oh, well, we'll wait to see what comes out of this summit. What are market investors monitoring?
To see what comes out of this.
While we'll wait to see that, what are market investors monitoring, Warda?
An interesting development to follow that's actually connected to what we're talking about is that European banks and lenders are actually doing a risk assessment, and building their risk models to prepare for a fallout from climate change. Some want to look at their short-term liquidity options of a hotter planet. So this survey, it said close to 90% of banks participating had already begun an internal climate stress assessment. So this is an interesting story I'm going to keep an eye on. Also, nearby in the UK, the recent surprising hot inflation data may force the Bank of England to step up their interest rates again today. So that's two things that market players here are watching out for.
Thanks so much, Warda Imran, for that update. We'll keep a close eye on what happens at the France summit. Now, global shares eased on Thursday. If we look at global markets, we saw a dip there as the U.S. Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, indicated rates had further room to rise, while the dollar held steady against the pound ahead of the Bank of England's decision, which they had, the rates were out today. Now, the MSCI All World Index was down 0.1%, heading for a fifth straight day of declines, its longest losing streak in 3 months. Last week, the Fed held its benchmark interest rate steady at between 5% and 5.25%, but officials projected rates will have to increase another 0.5% by the end of 2023 to tame inflation. Now, let's look at the key regions we track. Like in Asia now, Asia-Pacific markets were mixed after U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell forecast more rate hikes this year, saying that the process of getting back down to 2% has a long way to go. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 closed down 0.92%. It was dragged down by electronic stocks. South Korea's Kospi was up 0.43%, however, snapping 3 straight days of losses and closing at 2,593 points. Now we see Australia's S&P ASX 200 leading losses in the region and sliding by 1.63%. Its largest single-day decline in June, closing at 7,195 points, while we see Shanghai markets was down 1.31%. Mainland China and Taiwan are closed for a holiday today. Now, stock futures were lower in the U.S. after the market suffered 3 consecutive days of declines as a tech-powered rally faded. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.28%. S&P 500 futures were down by 0.29%, and NASDAQ 100 futures were down 0.43%. The rally appeared to decelerate this week as all 3 major averages fell 3 days in a row. The S&P 500 slid 0.5% on Wednesday, marking its worst daily performance in June. The equity benchmark is now down 1% week to date, on pace to break a 5-week win streak. Now, the tech-heavy NASDAQ composite fell 1.2%, suffering its worst daily performance since June the 7th. Now, big winner in artificial intelligence, AMD dropped 5.7% on Wednesday, while Intel retreated 6%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 0.3%. Wednesday's decline came as Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said more rate hikes are likely ahead to combat inflation, pouring cold water on investors who had hoped the central bank was close to the end of its tightening cycle. Investors will also monitor weekly jobless claims data today, which is expected to show a total of 256,000, according to economists polled by Dow Jones. Now, oil futures dipped early on Thursday amid demand fears after the Federal Reserve Chairman hinted at further interest rate hikes, while traders awaited official U.S. inventory data following an industry report that showed an unexpected draw in crude stocks. Brent futures fell 0.3% to $76.90 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate WTI crude futures were down 0.2%. Now, the benchmarks had gained $1 a barrel in the previous session as U.S. corn and soybean prices raised to multi-month highs, raising expectations that crop shortfalls around the globe could lower biofuels blending and increase oil demand. However, the market was cautious as Fed Chair Jerome Powell, in congressional testimony on Wednesday, reinforced that the central bank's objective was to rein in inflation and said 2 more 25 basis point rate hikes by the year end was to be expected. Now, gold prices spared losses on Wednesday, helped by a retreat in the dollar, although an uptick in bond yields after U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's congressional testimony kept bullion near a three-month low. Spot gold was steady at $1,936 per ounce after dropping as much as 0.9% earlier. U.S. gold futures settled 0.1% lower at $1,944.90. Analysts say there's not one major element putting pressure on the gold market, but rather a combination of rising yields and technical selling pressure. Benchmark 10-year Treasury yields rose after Powell's testimony started raising the opportunity cost of holding non-yielding bullion. Gold prices have been getting dragged lower by large-scale selling activity observed across silver, platinum, and palladium, despite the dollar's weakness, according to experts. Now, the co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mr. Bill Gates, engaged innovators and creators in Lagos, a conversation he hopes would drive the advancement of artificial intelligence in Africa. Let's take that report and see what it said.
It's a room full of startup founders, technology experts, innovators, and some of the brightest minds in Nigeria as they come together to gain insight from a tech icon and global changemaker, Bill Gates.
Once again,
the Pan-African Youth Innovation Forum 2023 is a gathering of tech champions in Africa, hosted by the Lagos Business School and Co-Creation Hub, with support from the Center for Communication and Social Impact, as well as Channels Television.
We must create an enabling ecosystem that nurtures innovation, encourages collaboration, and fosters a culture of research and development. This forum provides an opportunity for our youth to engage with thought leaders, industry experts, visionaries like Mr. Bill Gates. Together, we can learn from one another. Mr. Gates, I kindly invite you to come on stage.
Mr. Gates, who is co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, praises Nigeria's tech sector and creative industry and speaks to how advances in technology, especially artificial intelligence, can help fight inequity.
Being here in Nigeria, I can't help but mention the amazing creativity that goes on here. You know, Afrobeats from Nigeria are popular everywhere. When my daughter Phoebe heard I was coming to Nigeria, she said, "Oh, you're lucky you get to go see Burma Boy and Rima." So I had to look them up because I'm so hip. Now, talent and determination will be key to reduce the big equity gaps in this country. How we're going to take AI and use that in positive ways. A lot of talk about the challenges, and that's valid, but you know, AI is going to be used for things like designing malaria drugs. You know, malaria is a great example where there's not a great market opportunity, and so the normal approach wouldn't prioritize that. But when we put on this lens of inequity, obviously that's something very important.
After his speech, the American business magnate and investor, best known for co-founding software giant Microsoft, engaged in a chat with Bosun Tijani, co-founder and CEO of Co-Creation Hub, during which an opportunity was provided for members of the audience to ask questions.
Before your next trip, or in the next 4 years, what sort of progress would you like to see in the country?
Since the turn of the century, the reason that globally childhood deaths have been cut in half is largely because we added new vaccines for pneumonia, for diarrhea, a variety of vaccines, and we were able to drive that vaccine coverage up. And so, you know, our current goal, I'd say, in the country is helping to get the primary healthcare system to execute on that very basic intervention.
Imagine you had a magic wand and you could determine public policy in Africa, just one policy, what would that one policy be that would have the most impact and unleash the potential of youth in Africa?
Lagos is advantaged economically relative to the rest of the country, but I do think the government has to commit, hey, we are going to do better in health and education, and in return for that, as we're shifting, some subsidies, part of that is going to be getting up to a level that really is an investment in the next generation.
The Youth Innovation Forum is an avenue for Mr. Gates to engage young innovators and creators who are providing solutions to Africa's challenges, as well as share insights on how they can drive positive change in various sectors on the continent using artificial intelligence.
Interesting development. Now, after the break, more stories from the African continent, and that's with updates from the commodities market space. This is Business Incorporated. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. As we approach the Muslim festival, we can't help but notice that the astronomical rise in the price of oranges compared to the rate of food inflation and other fruits in Nigeria. Now, in the country, price of orange have risen by 67% in the last 2 months, from 1,500 naira per basket to 2,500 naira. To get more insights, we have Adeye Adegbusi, analyst with Financial Derivatives Company, joining us. Good afternoon, Adeye. It's good to have you on the show. Now, Adeye, is the surge in orange prices related to insufficient production in the country?
Yes, thank you for having me. Well, that's one way to look at it. But you know that there are also other factors contributing to the price increase. As we know, the reduction in PMS subsidy and also seasonal effects also come into play. So as we've all been experiencing, there has been transport prices have nearly doubled since the announcement of the reduction in subsidy, and the higher transport prices will be passed on to consumers through higher product prices. And also now with 7.5% VAT on diesel, this will also weigh on prices in the long run. Then now the seasonal effects which come into play here. Oranges are produced all year round, but are mainly high in production during the months of April, May, and December. So although there are still oranges available in the market, we are not at the peak season yet. We've passed the peak season, which means that prices are expected to remain high. Now, also, we cannot leave the fact that insecurity remains a big challenge to agricultural production in Nigeria. So, incessant security in major growing regions like Nasarawa, Benue have disincentivized farmers and stifled production in the country. So now these factors all come together to increase, and has led to the increase in price of oranges.
So you've mentioned seasonal factors here contributing to it, like the fact that oranges are more grown or more available in the month of April and some of the months you mentioned. Well, is it not more of a storage problem now? Because I feel we should, harness this right now and see how we can store oranges, and so we have them all year round. Now, some farmers, early last year, we did see citrus farmers in some parts of Nigeria, precisely Benue State, were worried about over-ripened oranges without adequate buyers. What can be done about the aspects of the value chain?
Yes, as you all know, storage infrastructure has been a major impediment to agriculture as a whole in Nigeria, and not only limited to oranges. So, as you said, Benue last year, farmers in Benue complained about their large harvest not having enough demand and a lack of storage facilities, which led to a lot of post-harvest losses. And reports also show that about 50% of fruits produced in Nigeria are lost between transit from farms to the market. So now this shows that a need to improve infrastructure, such as improved rural networks and of course storage facilities, as oranges are better stored in colder temperatures, colder rooms like fridges. And when this is done, you see that higher produce and also improve value chain addition. As you know, oranges are also used for make juices, also used in the pharmaceutical industry for soaps. and the back peel of oranges are also used as a form of livestock feed.
So we look forward to having oranges all year round because I do say we all love our oranges. But are there measures being taken by the government or market players to ensure value addition from orange production in the country? So if they can't store it in its natural form, they could make it into, say fruit juices that can be, stored with less preservatives.
Yes, so as we know, most orange produced in Nigeria are sold in markets for domestic use, to eat raw, fresh, or you make in your house, which leaves a small percentage for processing, and which shows that the value chain industry in Nigeria is very poor. So now there is a citrus research institute in the National Horticultural Research Institute in Ibadan, which has provided about 30 acres of land to produce citrus fruits such as oranges. So the institute is aimed at improving in production, also improving quality, and also boosting the value chain addition. There are other institutes around Nigeria, like the National Institute for Research in Lagos and other around, which are all aimed at, of course, boosting value addition rather. And yes, there's also a space for farmers to collaborate with major companies to produce fresh juices, and which creates a ready market for their orange, which will prevent losses and of course increase revenue and income for the farmers. So yes, there is a need to improve value addition of oranges in Nigeria because there's a large market for commodities like juices. So yes, improving value addition would benefit Nigeria and also the income of farmers.
So is there anything that's been done as into that possibly that in this regard in terms of value addition? Is there any example of anything taking place?
So aside from the institute, or previously they banned, and the government banned the imports of juices from abroad. So of course this boosted production of things like juices and canned drinks in the country. So yes, so a combination of all these factors and adding more, and of course improving incentives to farmers, and also increased collaboration with farmers and other industry players will boost value addition in the country.
Okay, thank you so much, Adewusi, analyst of financial derivatives company, for sharing those insights. Now away from commodities, oranges, now to Zambia, where the currency and dollar bonds traded near multi-month highs, having chalked up double-digit gains so far this month on expectation that the nation is about to clinch a debt restructuring deal with the official creditors. The kwacha strengthened 11.4% this month, the biggest gain among about 150 currencies, rising on Thursday to approach a 2-month high versus the dollar. Zambia's Eurobonds have returned 10.1%, a performance bested only by El Salvador and Argentina. The bond due 2027 is trading near the highest since September. And that's a wrap on Business Incorporated. Thanks for watching. I'm Will Ibang. See you tomorrow.